So,
If we,
Charlotta, you're the cinematographer of Aaron Sorkin's Molly's Game. I guess, first off, big question. How do you make something like poker visually interesting?
that was my big question too before starting the project. I did obviously watch some of the big poker movies before starting, and they all attack it differently. And I knew with this script, because it really isn't about the poker games. You don't actually follow the games except from in one scene. It's all about Molly Bloom and how she's controlling and how she's observing, how she's learning about it. So I quickly learned that it doesn't help me much to observe these, earlier and very successful poker movies, but that I had to understand and, through my chats with Aaron Sorkin, obviously, that this is a portrait of a woman more than about the poker games.
Talk a little bit about that. This is a character study about Molly Bloom. Talk a little bit about who she was and how you told her story visually.
I mean, she's a very intriguing woman. She ran away after she had this crazy crash in this skiing competition. She escaped that whole business and ran away to LA to to just be a young girl. So there was a real journey, because the beginning of the movie, or in the beginning of the flashbacks when you first meet her in LA, this whole excitement, which we all recall, being 20 and wanting to just explore the world, but it's so quickly becoming, crazy business for her. So that journey from it just being fun and excitement into where it goes, and at the end, she's in court. It was just, her story is very interesting to me, and I think you always work with your own fascination of of people and their stories, and I think I use it as a cinematographer to portray and to identify, because I think we also try and to tell a story to an audience who hopefully will identify with moments of it, not necessarily going to court against the United States of America, but many other things. So it obviously helps that you're fascinated and you're interested in the story personally.
This being an Aaron Sorkin movie, there's a lot of dialogue in it. Give me a second. Now, you are no stranger to films with a lot of dialogue in them. You just did Fences with Denzel Washington. How do you make scenes of people just talking, visually interesting?
It is a challenge, because it isn't about the visuals, and at the same time the visual has to support the words. So though you don't want it to be about the camera flying through the keyhole and take away the attention, I have to respect that the words is what is carrying the movie. However, I don't see that as so we'll just show whatever needs to be shown. I still always feel challenged by finding that true support, your truthful support to what is being said. And for in this case with Molly's Game, it's so much voiceover that a lot of the images a lot of the performances were Molly, Jessica Chastain observing the game, and we had to create a number of shots to get an energy into it. And as Aaron kept saying to me, there's a musical rhythm to it. So with this one, I had to understand the many cuts that I knew had to go into the movie, and that Aaron kept saying to me, it has to cut. I'm going to cut out of it. Don't necessarily make the 30-second long tracking shot, because it has to go like that. And I think that was a learning process for me too, but really exciting when I'm working with Aaron, who is, when you read the script, that is the pace of the movie. The script is this movie. So that was, Fences was a different approach, because it was slower, and it was and Denzel Washington didn't want it to be a play, but he was staying true to the play. So it was slower and longer tracks, and so even those two movies with a lot of words and a lot of dialogue, I approached it very differently, I have to say.
There's also a really complicated flashback structure to this movie. I mean, we get insight into Molly's childhood and her relationship with her father. At the same time, there's this, her looking back on what's happening, what led her to having to go to trial over this poker game. Were you at all? How did you differentiate the different timelines in this film? Were you at all worried about it being confusing visually?
Not necessarily confusing, but more, is it clear enough that we are in a different time, in a different space? But I think the number one thing that Aaron Sorkin said to me in our very first conversation when I flew to LA to meet him, he said, I have one thing that I want to, as the overall visual idea for you, and it was he wanted the New York, which is the present time, and a lot of the New York scenes are taking place in Charlie's office. So it's an interior office, New York, where he wanted that to be cooler, flatter, and the word he used was it needed to be more ordinary. And he said, like, I'm saying ordinary, but of course I wanted to be cinematic, but somehow flatter, slower, ordinary. Whereas LA had to have that speed, the game had to have the speed, and had to be more colorful. So that was his overall direction to me. And so I then digged into this and obviously started really working with what is it that makes it ordinary, you know, the cooler look in New York. And then each poker game has a different mood to it, because you had to subconsciously kind of understand that, you know, it grows, the money grows, but not do too much. So it had to be minimalistic and not overdo it. So I think we kind of work with fine balances of trying to achieve a different mood rather than a different look necessarily. I mean, it goes together, but.
You mentioned the poker games having different feels. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, the very first, when she first enters the poker business, which is in the Cobra Lounge, and she's basically, that's the first time she's ever probably, you know, attending a poker game. She is observing, she's listening, she's Googling, she's doing all this stuff, and it's an underground kind of feel to it, you know, so it's raw. Her look is very different, flat hair. So, and it's a dark space and a very colorful space. And then we moved into the more glamorous location. So I think there was a natural kind of change in the look and in the lighting. The lighting is much harder in that first spot, whereas we come to the more glamorous stuff. It's soft and it's candle lights and it's, you know, models carrying the drinks, and so everything just, you know, from the design as well. David Wasco did a great job in just providing locations. Obviously, introduce that difference too. But we did work in details with everything being different, so you are certainly sure that she's going back to that room, not to the Cobra Lounge, for example. They had to be different.
Was there a scene that was particularly difficult for you to figure out, something that you and Aaron just had to really work on to shoot? Was there anything like that that was difficult for you?
There was a lot of different. There was a lot of different.
Everything's difficult. Yeah.
Or do you mean practically, or for us in terms of understanding?
Yeah, I mean, like the visual storytelling approach to something, like a particularly difficult scene to figure out.
The skiing scenes, the opening of the movie was a challenge practically, because you're working on a hill. I can't remember the percentage of that, but it's a very difficult location to be working on. It's slow, you know, and we had obviously very limited time, and we had to have, you know, the script starts with, you know, description of how you cannot see, the weather's so bad, you know, so we had to have overcast weather, and there was a lot of things that had to match up. So, and then also just the stunt, you know, in and out of Jessica's scenes, and I think that was a particular kind of difficult approach, just from the locations. But I mean, other than that, there was some of the poker scenes were a challenge, because a lot of them, she's observing. She's sitting back by the table observing the game, but we had to have energy. But really, she isn't moving. And the players are sitting by a table, not really moving. There's energy around the table, but we don't want to focus on the game. What do you focus on then? So I think Aaron and I he said those, you know, he said that to me a couple of times, like, what on earth are we going to actually shoot for all this voiceover? Because there was a lot of voiceover, but they didn't move. So I was constantly trying to put more shots in, so I knew he could cut. Sometimes Aaron thought I was forcing a few too many shots in there, but I guess that was what I felt was needed for to tell the story.
Talk a little bit more about working with Aaron Sorkin. I mean, we all know that he's a fantastic writer. This is the very first thing he's directed. So what was that collaboration like between the two of you?
It was very interesting. Aaron he is a scriptwriter, and so he's very attached to his script, and he knows what the script is all about. And there is no like, oh, let's explore that or throw that out and bring something in. He has thoroughly thought this through, and it works in his head. And obviously, when it's the first time you work together, you got to find each other. And I think for Aaron, he's not the guy who's going to explain everything in details, and he's like, well, you read the script, and you gotta understand it, yourself, and bring something to him. But at the same time, he's a great guidance in terms of if there's something you ask, he has the answer straight away because he knows the story like nobody else. So I guess you have the greatest support you can have because he knows when it cuts. He knows the rhythm. And I think that's another thing that it's not like he's a very technical director that's like, oh, put that lens on. In fact, we had a lot of jokes with whatever lens. He would say like, put the 61 on, or, just to just kind of joke about that, whatever lens is right, just get it on, so he wouldn't kind of focus on the actual technical equipment, but the rhythm was important to him, and he could always feel if I wasn't on the right move, if it was too wide, when it felt too slow. So I guess he was directing through the rhythm that I guess that he has that as a writer. It was a very interesting, because we didn't cover the same field. I was over here and he was here, but you meet, and I really enjoyed it.
You've worked on a wide variety of movies. I mean, we mentioned Fences. Last year, you also worked on Girl on the Train. You've done a lot of movies with Thomas Vinterberg, particularly The Hunt and Far from the Maddening Crowd. What do you look for in a script that you're going to work on?
Identification. And it doesn't matter if there's a creature in there, but I feel, that I can somehow identify that I feel I can bring something, and it doesn't have to be, oh, it's got to match my story. Not at all. On the other hand, it's more interesting too. But I think even though stories are very different, you can feel how it touches you because you get involved because you might have a similar situation or the human, a portrait like this. I love stories about people, about human weaknesses and strengths, but in any genre, it doesn't have to be thriller or anything specific. You just worked on a silent movie, in fact, so with hardly no words, which is a complete. And I think also the challenges and just the difference is exciting to me. But obviously, the good story has a heart, and I think to feel the heart, you got to personally connect with the story.
I think you mentioned this. A Quiet Place, is that the movie you were referring to that you just did? Yeah. I was going to ask you if you could give us any details about that, because that's coming up this spring.
Yeah. Well, again, that was a very different approach, just because it's, first of all, there's a lot of VFX in it, because there's a creature in there. And then working with so many words, doing 2 movies and then go to no words, where the images it doesn't have to carry the story, still the performances are definitely carrying the story in that movie, but still you had to really take care of it, understand the speed of that. And also because it's sign language, so the sizes, when do you need to see the hands? In the beginning of the movie, you have to see more hands than later on. And so it was a different, the weight just suddenly, because the images wasn't just supporting the words, now they had to carry the story somehow. But it was a great challenge, and that's exciting. That's very exciting.
I certainly look forward to that. Charlotte, thank you so much. Congratulations on Molly's Game. Thank you for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome.